I would say if you're a real estate photographer or you're an agency owner and you're skeptical about switching to AI, it's for good reason if you've never tried it, right? So I would just say go and try it. You can test it without any risk. You only pay for what you download. Go and see what the results you get are. See if you could deliver them to your client.
Welcome to the Partners Podcast, where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes access to entrepreneurs who are relentlessly building real, profitable companies. Join us as we ask them the hard questions so you can take away the mindset, strategy, and tactics that launch them to success.
Welcome to a special episode of the Partners Podcast, joined by a legendary founder today, someone who is sweeping the industry with a new technology around AI, Matt Gia of Auto HDR. Thanks so much, Matt. Love the podcast setup you got going on. How's everything been on your end?
Good. We're working hard, as you know. It's awesome to be on here, share a bit about my background, what we're trying to do, and just chat.
Awesome. So you have a pretty interesting background. I actually was scrolling your personal Instagram and I saw you doing crazy backflips on the trampoline, like 50 of them at a time. It was wild to see. And you're extremely disciplined for someone your age. When I was your age, I was a party animal. I was getting drunk, going to concerts, and you're dialed. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey? Who were you in high school? I guess, what was your transformative years going into college? And you also owned an agency at one point. So just maybe the next couple minutes, just speed run me through your initial chapters in life.
Yeah, it's funny you brought up the trampoline stuff. So in high school, I was a competitive freestyle trampoline athlete. So really niche, extreme sport, but it's all I cared about. Every day I'd come home from high school and just train and basically just try to be the best in the world at that sport. So yeah, on my Instagram, there's videos of the quadruple backflip side by side and all that stuff. But basically that was my obsession.
You're downplaying it too much though, Matt. We got to show the audience, play some of these backflips right now. This guy went crazy. When I was watching, I couldn't stop watching. I was like, how many flips he's going to do in a row? That for me was a childhood dream. I had a trampoline, but I never had the courage to do a backflip. I tried to learn how to do a backflip in college, and I sprained my wrist. And I was just like, all right, I'm chilling for a little bit.
I'll teach you at the next mastermind.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, everyone has a trampoline, and I did too. And really, just whatever I get into, I get really obsessed with, and I always want to do whatever I do to the highest level. And so that was that thing for me in high school. And so I was never naturally a very good athlete, but I was obsessed with trampoline. I wanted to be the best in the world. I was ranked 18th in the world senior year of high school. And so I'd travel around internationally. I'd compete, and I would make these videos on Instagram where that's how I learned to film. That's why I got a camera. That's how I learned to edit. And then I was still, a high school kid. I was working an hourly job, not making much money. And so I'm from this island, this small 14-mile-long island called Nantucket, and there's a lot of really nice houses. And so one day we had a family friend that was a broker, and he's like, well, you could make a video tour of one of these houses. And so I did that, and I made $150, which for me, that's nothing by our standards now, but for me at the time, that was 7 hours of work. And so then I hit up all the other brokers on the island, started emailing, calling, hitting them up on Instagram, every way I could get a hold of them. And then I started becoming the video guy. And then I realized, well, they need photos too. No one was doing HDR photos. If you looked at Zillow on Nantucket, which is one of the most luxurious markets in the US, 5 years ago, no one was doing HDR photography. And so I started doing that. And then I learned, okay, you can do drone too. You can do 3D tours. And then I made it into a business when I was, 17. And then when I went to college, the first semester, I couldn't shoot, but brokers still needed photos. And so I actually ended up hiring my photography teacher from high school to shoot for me whenever I was at school. And then as we scaled up, I hired an editing team, and then I hired another photographer until the point we're at now, where now, I've hired someone to run that business entirely, which has given me my my time back to work on the software.
That's awesome. And yeah, I think first time I saw your work, I was pretty impressed. You've done collabs with like Studio 910, Claudio there. You've also been able to like have that business be completely on autopilot. So something I believe in is like teaching someone else everything you know so you can move on to bigger opportunities. And I feel like you did that really quick, because a lot of agency owners, they struggle with letting go of certain jobs or responsibilities and roles within their company. One, because they don't know what's next, right? And you had a clear vision of like, hey, I'm trying to put someone else in place at my agency so it can be on autopilot, so I can work on this even bigger opportunity. And I think that's really cool. And I think it's something that I think a lot of agency owners that might be listening in on this can learn from. Is just like, it's not about making the max profit on every deal. It's about how big can you grow it and how fast can you buy back your time so you can work on cooler stuff. As long as there's obviously cooler stuff around the, around the corner. For a lot of people, maybe the agency stuff is the coolest stuff that they want to do. So there's nothing wrong with that. But what was the next chapter after that then? Tell me about, or I think we all know at this point, people that might be watching, Auto HDR is the next wave of AI photo editing for real estate specifically. What did it take to make this a reality? Like, what type of sacrifices did you have to make? What type of uncertainty did you have to navigate in the beginning? I remember when you first told me you were going to work on it, I was just like, bro, you're in college. You don't know you don't know where to start when it comes to programming and AI and a software company. And you're like, actually, I'm a machine learning, like degree, like that's my study. And I was like, oh, well, maybe there's a little bit more to this. But like, tell me about like the challenges that you had to overcome in the first couple months to just make this transition.
I mean, I studied software engineering and machine learning, but the honest reality is that I didn't know what I was doing, right? It's something that's never been done before. And so of course not. But I needed to get buy-in from someone, right? All that I knew is that I would figure it out at all costs. And so, I had this opportunity to go and grow my agency, or I could sacrifice that, put someone else behind the helm, and then go all in on this opportunity. And so that's what I did. After I graduated college in June, like you mentioned, I kind of replicated myself. I spent the time doing that for someone who could now run my business. And I had to stop worrying about those fires. I had to let some of them burn so he could figure it out for himself, how to run that operation. And it feels like, by the way, if you're an agency owner listening to this, you're probably up at night responding to emails of little revision requests, trying to make sure that everything goes perfectly. And you feel like it's the end of the world if you ever try to abstract yourself from that or let someone else run your business or even shoot a house. But it's possible, right? And that's some, I never really thought that would be possible until I got so caught up in the day-to-day with Auto HDR that I can't even focus on the stuff in my business. It's not even, I don't even think about it. And like, you can get to that point as well. You just have to get out of the day-to-day a little bit and trust someone else. Any knowledge that you have can be replicated. I promise you that. But anyway, I got to that step and it wasn't a perfect transition, Like, if you build something, someone else is probably never going to run it as well as you. But ultimately, you have to think about what's your biggest opportunity. And so for me, AI photo editing had not been solved. I was in a unique position where I know the domain and the niche of real estate photography. I've been in houses shooting. I've done the editing. I've done the outsourcing. I get the pain points, and I can also do machine learning work. And so I felt like I was in a unique position to bring this to market. And so whatever I do, I'm going to put 10 out of 10 execution into. And so I don't want to do that on something that, for me, real estate photography is good. You can make a lot of money, but for me, it's maybe a 3 or a 4 out of 10 opportunity. Whereas maybe making a more scalable software company where you make a great product that's infinitely scalable, to me, that's a 7, 8, 9 out of 10 opportunity, and something where I feel like I can make a bigger, more scalable impact on a big industry. Yeah. So
we gotta pause right here real quick, because when you say you put 10 out of 10 effort, I didn't really realize what you meant. I knew to some degree you were relentless and you had the passion and drive because of the result you created from the real estate videos. But only we're going to show this clip again. Hey guys, show the clip of Matt lifting the most weights I've ever seen. I don't know how tall you are, a 5', 11 guy lift. This guy is going off the rockers with how much he lifts. He's all in on everything he does. And that's why, after I saw that, I had a newfound appreciation for who you are as a person. I was just like, this guy, whatever he's going to do, he's going to go 120%. So I just want to give you a big shout out there. When I saw, I should have, if I saw that earlier on, I would have been like, I'm for sure betting on this guy.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And it's not like, that's just, like I said, I have a very obsessive personality. And so what I get into, whether that's trampoline or, in college weightlifting to get to that like 600-pound deadlift, I'm going to like basically not stop until I have accomplished it at the highest level that's like physically attainable for me. That's just what I do. And it comes at the cost of a lot of other things, but that's just who I am. And so going back to like June of this year, I think I approached, you're not the first person that I approached saying, hey, can we work together? I know you have a giant data set of raw and edited photos. I talked to other people and everyone was hesitant, right? Everyone's like, there's privacy concerns and I don't want to waste my time with this. What's the probability that this kid really even knows what he's doing? I was 21, right? On the surface, it's probably a terrible idea, but you're forward thinking. You're usually on the cusp of whatever's happening in this industry. And you were the person who gave me a shot. There's even amazing people in the space who I also approached who did not give me that initial shot that are now working with us as well. Now that it is working. So I appreciate you doing that and having that foresight and willingness to take a chance. But I basically, I had program experience. I had machine learning experience. I had no idea how I was going to solve this problem. I just knew that I would do it. And so after I graduated, I basically locked myself in my room and said, I'm going to figure this out. And I just got to work. And I said, no matter how much money investment from my savings and from the real estate photography business, it's going to require, no matter how much time, no matter how much sacrifice, I'm going to make it happen. And so I would say it went June, July, August, September, October, making progress, but nothing major. And then by November, I had a MVP, something where I was actually getting production ready photos out of this model. And it was like, wow, this really can be a reality. And at that point, it was just a matter of, okay, we've developed a model that can learn. Let's scale up the data set. That's when we launched our beta. We started having, people upload photos. They were flagging them. Hey, here are the bad ones. All people who were like, hey, yeah, we want to help make this program as good as possible. They flagged the bad ones. And then we had our human editing team edit those. And then we had a bigger and bigger data set and we retrained it until the point where we're at now, where we felt comfortable launching Auto HDR publicly.
Yeah. And the reaction is quite polarizing. I feel like some people are like, the quality is not good. I'd rather pay humans more. I don't want to put them out of a job. And then there are other agencies saying, hey, this is the future. Let me lean into this. How do I adopt this as soon as possible and benefit from it? So for those who have adopted it, why have they chosen Auto HDR over? There's so many other options that have tried it, tried tackling, some sort of software based photo editing, Photomatics, auto enhance, you name it. And even large companies, I remember talking to companies 2-3 years ago, and they're like, we're training on 2 million photos, 3 million photos. And it was like a bang and a fizzle. I never heard from them afterwards. I was like, what happened to all this training? Did you give up on it? And so two-part question, right? We can go back to how hard it was to really figure this out once more. But for the people that have adopted it as agencies, there's agencies that have signed up to process 10,000 images, 20,000 images a month through Auto HDR. And then there's people that are just, maybe early in their journey, but they're like, hey, this is a better solution that I believe than using, an editor on Pixelmob or an editor on the Facebook groups. Why have they chosen to make this transition?
So this has been incredibly interesting for me to see. And I'll use the example of one of the companies who just heard about us early on through word of mouth. Someone through the beta program, I think, sent them the link. This is a company that does 30 to 40 shoots a day, quite high volume, and honestly founded the product at a point before I was even comfortable marketing it publicly. We're still working out the flaws in the workflow, consistency, all that stuff. But when you've scaled a business to that point, your systems and operations are absolutely dialed in. And so they started thinking opportunistically, even if this is not working. And at that point, I would say only 75 or 80% of the outputs were usable. They started saying, hey, how can we make this work? And so that's what I'm seeing the truly good business owners do. Even at that point, they're saying, how can we make this work? And they started within a couple of weeks of using it, delivering within an hour or two. And so this is insane, right? They're the only person in their market delivering within an hour or two and having production ready photos. And so there are people who I get on calls and I help them and hold their hand through the process of that sale. There's some people who I've never even heard from that sign up for our largest tier and restructure their processes in a week because they're like, we need to do this. We're going to save 30 to 50% on our editing costs and just be wiping the local market because we're turning around photos the same day. And so that's kind of contrasts with people who are more like artists, right? Solo photographers who worry about every little detail and just really having true hands-on approach and ownership over the process. So it's been interesting to see that divergence. And then there's people in the middle who maybe just need a little bit of help getting there.
Yeah. And yeah, that's something that you and I have talked through several agency owners on a weekly basis of like what they need to transition to make it happen, or how they can integrate new workflows, new processes. So what is the ideal workflow for a one-man band versus a small team versus a large agency? Maybe let's just break it down, from a snapshot point of view. Like, how does the workflow change from what is normally, hey, at the end of the day, send it out and get it back in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would break down real estate photographers and real estate photography companies into a few different tiers. So if you're very early on, you're doing all of the shooting yourself, maybe even all of the editing yourself. Maybe you haven't gone to that step of outsourcing editing. And so you're still spending hours trying to mask windows and get the white balance right and all that. So if you're doing that, we're seeing those entry-level photographers just upload the photos. They get them back in 20 to 30 minutes. And then right now we see about a 95% production ready, good to go rate on our edits. They'll do any little touch-ups they need themselves, whether that's a tilt shift or a little bit of brightness, and they'll send it off and they save time, get to spend the night with their family or whatever it may be. Then you get to the next step where maybe it's someone kind of like my business where you have 3 photographers that you manage and they're shooting throughout the day. And then you have like one quality control VA, right? Normally that workflow is, well, your photographers go shoot, the VA is sending that folder to the editors to be edited. They get it back, they QC, do revisions, they upload it to their delivery platform. Right now with Auto HDR, there's 2 things that you can do. You can have all of your photographers upload to Auto HDR and have your VA QC within the platform, make any little adjustments, item removals, virtual twilights in the platform, and then upload it to your delivery platform. Or you can go the even more automated route. And this is really cool. You can do a one-click Dropbox automation with Auto HDR, where any photos you upload to a raw photos folder, we detect, download, edit, and re-upload to your Dropbox. You can even have those automatically import to your listing delivery platform, whether that's Ario, HD Photo Hub, or Tonimo. And for Spiro, we actually have a direct integration. So it's one button click and the whole thing is automated. So those are the 2 main ways that we're seeing it done. And just like with human editors, there's always going to be a QC step, especially at this point, right? The AI is the worst that it'll ever be, and it's still around a 95% hit rate empirically based on what we see. And so your VA will do the same thing, but they'll probably just be looking for different things than when a human was editing it. So I would say, like, generally, things that we do better than a human are color casts, the color of walls, just overall consistency. But occasionally there might be a weird cloud generation, which is specific to AI, which your VA would go remove very easily and then deliver. And so those are the main processes that we see.
Yeah, awesome to hear. And when you break it down to that level, it seems quite simple and not so scary. So why are agency owners scared right now? Like, why do you think some haven't taken the leap of faith or
Mm-hmm.
just said, "Hey, let's make this work at all costs,"
Mm-hmm.
even though agencies that are using or that used to use like large companies like eSoft
Yeah.
and high-end editors that they paid 85 cents a dollar to have made the transition to Auto HDR.
Mm-hmm.
What is holding some of these agency owners or photographers back from making that transition, you feel like?
Well, if I put myself in their shoes, maybe they've just heard about Auto HDR in an Instagram ad or seen it on Facebook. Maybe they haven't even tried it. Maybe they think it's a sham, right? Or they think, I'm going to have to refactor. Like, I hate writing SOPs. Once you get your workflow dialed in, it's a pain to rip out your process and do something new. And so there's going to be some reluctancy there. But that's why we've designed it so that you don't have to interfere with your existing workflow, right? You're probably already uploading to a raw photos folder in Dropbox and having your editors upload your photos to a final edited images folder. So that's why we just designed the system to automatically import, edit those photos and put them into a final images folder. Like, we've designed the system from the perspective of a real estate photography company so that you don't have to refactor, redesign your systems and processes, but it's just a seamless switch. And so I would say if you're a real estate photographer or you're an agency owner and you're skeptical about switching to AI, it's for good reason if you've never tried it, right? So I would just say go and try it. You can go to autohdr.com. You can test it without any risk. You only pay for what you download. So I would just say, like, go and see what the results you get are. See if you could deliver them to your client. Hey, even, you get credits when you sign up. Just try and deliver them and see if your agents notice a difference. Practice actually uploading photos with the automation and see, hey, could we really deliver within an hour or two? Would this work for us? Because again, you're not paying any money to test it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I know I've seen personally the software, the platform develop at a rapid pace, and things have changed. At one point, you actually provided some editors in the loop.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's something that
Yeah.
is limited. We're not trying to scale an actual human photo editing company, but other companies can now, like, it's transition that they can put their editors inside the platform and use that same feature where they can click, hey, flag this, and an editor is able to go ahead and fix that. Can you tell me about like this feature development? Like, what is on the horizon? What is already existing? Like right now, as it stands, what is Auto HDR from a software stack of like being a photo editing tool and solution?
Yeah.
What is all included? And then what's coming out in the near future?
Absolutely. So like, our vision with Auto HDR is that it's the full service editing solution for all real estate photographers and real estate photography companies. And so I've designed it from the perspective of being a real estate photographer myself. I think if you try other platforms, you have to go through 20 or 30 steps just to even upload the photos. That's why I wanted to keep it as simple and functional as possible on our landing page, where it's a drag and drop box. You don't need to say, hey, these are aerial photos. Oh, I shot 3 bracket. I shot 5 bracket. You drag and drop, and then you get your photos back in 20 or 30 minutes. Now, as a real estate photographer, I also know there's a lot of stuff that agents ask for, right? Or maybe they're upsells. So that's why we have the virtual twilight. That's why we have the item removal option. And that's why we're working on features that are heavily requested, like a one-click green lawn replacement, like automatic fireplace detection and fire insertion, things like that, right? And so we are constant, like, I have my finger on the pulse of what people want. I am reading YouTube comments. I'm in Facebook forums, not replying, because I could say what we're going to do. I would rather just get to work on it and just drop an update in a few weeks and blow people away. I'm not saying you got to switch over. I'm just saying keep trying the software, because we have a group of young, early 20s developers who are absolutely obsessed and spend their life doing this. We work 7 days a week. We work 12 to 18 hours a day, and we're just trying to get all of that developed for all the people who use the platform. And
Yeah.
so
I'm a witness to that. Like I'm messaging Matt because I'm also like a workaholic is what some of my peers call me. They're like, dude, I've never seen someone work like you. I'm like, well, I haven't seen someone work like Matt in a minute because you're up on a Sunday night, 2 a.m., not just yourself as a founder,
yeah,
but your team is obsessed with
yeah,
building this product. Like,
yeah.
you know, do you got to give them unlimited Red Bulls or are they just dialed because they love it?
We are a highly caffeinated group. Yeah. No, but
Funny.
they love it. I mean, ultimately too, it's a really fun product to work on, right?
Yeah.
Like, so my co-founder, I'm absolutely blessed to have found him. I came to this co-working space in Austin. I was sitting next to this guy and he's working on, okay, very talented programmer. Maybe the business model wasn't dialed in, even admittedly from himself. He was working on a video game where it was a party game. Everyone would sit around a table, take a photo of themselves, and then answer funny prompts, and it would visualize them in like a crazy scene with an AI generated background. And so he's basically doing something very similar. He understands the AI processing pipeline. He's already figured out, hey, how can we deliver photos very quickly in the most cost-effective way, get them back to people efficiently without failures. And so I'm like, okay, we got to team up. And so that's what we did. And it's fun to work on, right? We literally we are basically what we're doing is how can we make these photos of houses look as beautiful as possible? And so that's what we get to work on all day.
I love it. So I think that's a pretty interesting conversation topic is finding a business partner, finding co-founders. You know, this person is also someone who holds equity. How do you decide whether or not that person is the right fit? I think a lot of people have scratched their head about like, hey, should I bring in a business partner? Should I bring in a co-founder, whether it's to their agency or it's to another business? How did you go about finding your business partner, and what were some of the steps and qualifications that you went about, you know, making sure that they were going to be the right partner? Because this is someone you're giving, you know, ownership of your baby to, right? Like for lack of a better word.
It's such a good question. And honestly, it's something I was asking too, like in November when it was still me working on this. And it's something I had a lot of anxiety around because if you mess it up, it can be a nightmare, right? So when I was building out my agency, I did it alone because I was like, well, I just want to maintain full equity, right? Full earning potential over this. And I feel like I can efficiently delegate to people the work that I need to do to replicate myself at a lower wage. And so why don't I just keep full ownership? But really, when it came down to the software and I was thinking about and considering everything that needs to be done to make this a success, right? When you're running and starting the business, you're basically like the chief worrier, right? You're going to make sure nothing goes wrong. That's why I'm on Slack at 2 a.m. I'm trying to make sure the customers have a good experience. I'm hiring the right developers, you know, the right people, like partners like you to help with marketing. And so you have to consider everything. And so I'm like, when you're building a software company that is going to achieve what we want to achieve, I cannot be the only person that has full stake, right? Because you can get employees and they might work hard. We have employees that work extremely hard until 2 a.m. with us. But if you really want someone who gives a shit, you're going to have to give them ownership. And so when I found my co-founder, you know, this is someone who I could still probably pay well and he would do great work. And I was like, I could, at the end of the day, honestly, I could make more money giving him zero equity and just giving him a great salary and he'd probably work pretty hard. But there's just the sense of ownership, right? When I gave him that equity stake that I wanted him to have, where he's in there every single day with me 7 days a week, really, really caring that we make something that changes the game. Yeah. Also, in terms of like structuring it, you asked, how do you find that right person, right? Well, that's a good question. There are people who seem like amazing hires or business partners right off the bat. There's also a lot of really charismatic people who can bullshit their way through landing deals, putting themselves in favorable positions. And so what I always recommend, like no matter how good it seems, find someone who intuitively has the right vibe, seems like a good candidate, right? So in my case, it was a young person who is single, a hard worker, and has talent in the niche that I want. And then do a test period. This is what we do with our new hires, whether they're a customer support person or a developer. We give them a test. And it's exactly what they would be doing on a day-to-day basis, right? And so if it's a customer support person, we give them the inbox and say, hey, draft 20 emails. If it's a developer, we give them a problem that we just solved last week and say, hey, solve this. So for Dan, my co-founder, I said, hey, let's set, without getting too technical, is like basically like, you know, set up this tech stack that you just did for your video game that's going to help us process photos more quickly in a more scalable way. And then he banged that out. It would probably take most competent people weeks or maybe a month to do it. And he did it in about 2 days. And at that point, I'm like, okay, let's get this set up. For a while, we just had a handshake agreement and we just got to work. And as well, you know, you need to hedge for yourself. You still can't say from a 1 week period. So you have vesting terms for equity, especially if you're the original founder. Hey, over this many years, we'll do this much vesting, but that's how I went about it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you found Dan, and he seems like amazing. Did I get the name right? Dan, right?
Dan, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure because sometimes I use the wrong names. I'm like, oops. Yeah, Dan seems like a solid dude. I'm bummed I didn't get to meet him in Austin. You should have brought him out. I bet he was.
A little background on why. I mean, originally the plan was to have him come to the mastermind, but we basically got the green light on the Spiro integration that that Thursday or Friday, and then we heard from Todd and his lead developer that they wanted to go live Monday at 9:30 a.m. And so for us, Spiro integration is a big deal. It's a needle mover, and so we do whatever it takes. And so I even had to miss a day of the mastermind. That second day, I came later at like 6 p.m., but we, you know, we're going to do whatever it takes to hit those deadlines and make sure it goes well. So that's why he missed it.
Yeah. I think there's something different. You know, I manage a lot of teams. I have a lot of clients. I have, you know, contractors I've worked with. There's nothing that beats like a true A player that's like fully all in with you. Yeah. You know, and that's something that joining your company and being part of this journey with you, it was like a breath of fresh air because it's been a minute since I've actually met a founder who was probably more obsessed with the business than I was when I first started Aerial Canvas. Yeah, I was the guy who worked for 2 years straight, 80 hours a week on average. You know, people were like, dude, can you get off your phone? I'm like, no, dude, like fucking duty calls. Like I'm trying to build this empire. I'm trying to take care of all these clients. I'm trying to make sure my team is fed. I'm trying to do everything. Right. So it's cool to see. And I'm glad you found A players to run Auto HDR with you. Let's kind of go a little bit, you know, into the fun part. Like, you know, like tell me about like the team right now, the team dynamic. Like, how do you guys go about your work days? Like, how do you keep it actually fun, right? Like, how do you keep it light? Because when you're working 70, 80 hours, you know, it's sometimes stress gets to you, right? Especially with all these customers complaining about issues. And how do you juggle the fun and the light-hearted side of business, which is almost a must? And sometimes I lose touch of with like, hey, let's get shit done. These are deadlines. Are you running this like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, or are you running it kind of halfway in the middle, you know, like WeWork or something?
So it's a mix. So we understand, especially because I feel like being a real estate photographer allows us to kind of give a unique experience and unique product. And I've conveyed that to the team. I'm like, look, so we have a queue where we can see any failed shoot. You know, we process at this point, you know, yesterday we processed like 18,000 photos. So even if you have 1% of those shoots fail, you're going to have a lot of failed shoots for whatever reason. And so we have a queue and we have a developer looking at that queue. And I'm like, look, this is not just a number or, you know, a failed shoot is a big deal. That is someone who could potentially lose their client, who could lose business. That has a big impact, especially if they fired their editor, right? And so in some sense, I mean, honestly, it is extremely stressful because we basically can have a 0% failure rate. And if we do, we need to communicate that right away. And it's not like we just have people uploading from 9 to 5. We have people uploading all day. Overseas, we had to hire a developer overseas to accommodate the night shift. And when I wake up, there's 5 to 10 fires that need handling, you know, just after the last ones were put out. And especially if you want to balance, making sure everything that's running already is going well, you know, as well as growth so that we can be the category leader, which is our goal, it's a lot. And so, yeah, I mean, to answer your question, yeah, I try to run a tight ship. And I think, honestly, Dan probably brings that comic relief for our team. He's a goofy guy. I won't even share on this podcast, honestly, but I'll tell you that he keeps it incredibly fun. So there's a bit of that when, you know, last night we're up till 2 a.m. getting an MVP out for another integration we're working on. And it's like, oh my gosh. And he brings a little bit of fun to it while I kind of try to bring the discipline. It's a good mix. You know, if you're going to spend all day in an office with these people, again, we're all young 20s. There's got to be some, you have to maintain good culture, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I love to hear it. Reminds me of like some of my partnerships. There's always got to be someone who's a little bit more lighthearted because, you know, sometimes I am allowed. Sometimes it's like, I know you're a fun guy because I've hung out with you, but like you can't even sometimes allow yourself to be too fun because then your team won't take you seriously.
You have need to set the standard.
You need a bad cop. You need a director. You need someone who's just like, hey, we need to go this way, and you know we're not fucking around here, right?
Exactly.
And then you know, so I've been able to be the fun guy when I have another partner who is the more serious person, right? But if there's no serious person, you know, as a founder of several companies, I have to always rise up. And then people are like, Brendan, you know, why are you so like, you know, all the time? I'm like, hey, you know, if you're then I can be more relaxed. You know? So,
and for me, it's also really important to set a standard of not doing anything good enough. And so whenever I'm looking at design that someone has presented and we're about to put it on the site, and it's like, is this good enough? I like always will be a pain in the ass to make sure that it is exceptionally good. Because even if it is good enough and no one's going to notice, you just have to set a standard that they're going to meet in the future. Because if you're
people hate me for that, I'm the same way. They're like, Brendan, is nothing good enough for you? We can't impress you. I'm like, hey, dude, I didn't get here by everything's good enough. I got here because, hey, I'm always trying to improve. There's always like a tweak I need to make. There's always an adjustment that needs to happen sooner than later to adapt, right? So,
but that's also a big challenge because for us, we try to move incredibly quickly to roll out new features and add new things. And so it's like, it is an extremely delicate balance between doing things and getting them out and then doing it right. And ultimately things are going to break. And so our philosophy generally is like, let's get it out. It seems good from our perspective. Instead of spending another week or month testing every single edge case and trying to guess what people want, let them use it. And then when we get feedback, we know what to build to accommodate, to actually build what people want. Because so many people spend time building features and making things that no one actually cares about. And it's the biggest waste of time.
So tell me about this platform stability. You guys are running off, you know, a bunch of GPUs and servers. Like, is this reliable? Like, you know, sometimes Facebook is down, right? And obviously maybe we all have bigger problems to worry about if the internet's down. But like, how reliable is Auto HDR? Like, give me some confidence. I don't even know the technical side, but like, you know, you told me about where, you know, the number of servers we have and all these things. Maybe let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, there's 2 points of failures, right? Which is, you know, do you have backup servers where it scales up automatically if for some reason something gets blocked or it crashes or whatever? And so that has to be highly scalable. And that's something that we spend a lot of time doing. So there's backups, right? And it does, like, there's bugs that you introduce where it goes down and people don't notice because we have backups on backups and backups, right? And then there's, how many GPUs do you have, right? This stuff is not cheap to run. This is a very complex model with billions of parameters and it requires expensive hardware to run. We don't own that hardware. Buying hundreds of GPUs costs tens of millions of dollars. And, you know, you need a warehouse and coolant, and that's a whole business in itself. And so we rent those from cloud computing companies. And so the question is, well, you know, what's your limitations there? I mean, behind the scenes, like, luckily there's this Google sales rep. Most people get access to like 1 or maybe 8 on an enterprise scale. There's a Google sales rep who we like, I mean, ultimately we were like, had the foresight, fortunately, to be like, we need to develop a relationship with this guy. So when we were in Austin, we were like, okay, let's make friends with him. We took him out to lunch downtown. We kept a relationship to the point where like now him and Dan go and see Justin Timberlake concerts together. And he hooked us up where we got up to 128 GPUs. And then we even have backup on that. So it's like, we can scale. We can scale.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, let's tie this up. What's the future looking like for Auto HDR? Are you gonna be driving a Lambo soon and on a yacht, or are you like what's the plan here?
I'm not. No. I mean, I have one goal, and that is to be the category leader for real estate photo editing. And so we're hyper focused on that. Other companies go into stuff like portraits or video or whatever. We have one goal, and we want to be the best at one thing. And so I have on my radar what everyone complains about. And so I can't, I'm hiring developers and people to make that happen. And we just want to execute on that, see that roadmap. So within the next year, we have very aggressive goals for what percent of all US home listings we want to be editing. That's our KPI, right? And so we're just breaking down every pain point so that people can use our software, because we want to basically change the industry standard. That company I mentioned who started out with us doing 30 or 40 shoots a day, this is what they're doing. This is what the future of real estate photography looks like. Your photographers shoot photos on site. They shoot JPEG because the quality with Auto HDR is indistinguishable from RAW. They have an SD card adapter that they plug into their iPhone, and they've uploaded it as they're closing blinds and driving to their next appointment. The photos are done by the time they're shooting the next appointment, and there's a VA that's QC'd and delivered those to the client within an hour of shooting. That's what it's going to look like, and that's what we want to enable for everyone. We want to enable speed so you can offer the best service possible to your clients. We want to enable automation to eliminate manual steps so you can get your time back and have a scalable business that requires less people and manual effort. And we want to save you money. There are companies that do 30 to 40 shoots a day that we are saving over $100,000 per year that they're putting back into business development and marketing, or they're just putting in their pocket. So that's our vision. We want to bring that to everyone.
Well, I'm glad you're not one of those Lambo or Lambo like tech
Lambros.
bros who just want, Lambros. Something that impressed me was like, you're not. It's not about like the money. Obviously, is a byproduct of the value you create, but you're reinvesting every dollar since the very beginning. You haven't even taken, to my knowledge, a real salary from the company. Every dollar is going back into the business. Your co-founder, Dan, I know, is quite similar, and you guys are so
we don't
all
take
in,
any money out,
and everything's, being reinvested back. And that's like the beauty of working with a company like yours, is knowing how fast the product can improve because of who you've trusted with those resources. Yes, agency owners and photographers and real estate they're already saving the money, they're already getting the speed. But on top of that, every excess dollar they spend with you, that is, technically your profits, is going right back into making a better product for them. And I think that's the beauty of working with a company like yours.
I appreciate that. When we land what to us is like a big fish enterprise client, someone who does 30 to 40 shoots a day, we don't go, sweet, we can get a better office or get X, Y, Z. Like I said, I don't take salary. Dan doesn't take salary. We go, awesome. We can afford another developer to focus on this feature. So yeah, I appreciate that. And by the way, it's been awesome working with you too, because you're also on Slack at 2 a.m. You're all in. You're always about what is the newest thing. Like you're looking, how can I leverage AI to do more at once? Like you're on top of it. You're really in terms of like this niche, I don't think anyone really does it better, right? You just know it better than anyone else. You're the best connected person. So it's been cool to see how obsessed you are over your work as well.
Awesome. Well, hey, it was awesome having you on the Partners Podcast. Excited to keep growing with you. A lot of our partners are stoked about, the transition they've made to Auto HDR, getting better price points for their editing, getting faster turnaround times, more consistency. It's crazy to hear that, large companies like eSoft were failing enterprise level clients that were doing 200-300 shoots a month. Like, how do you mess that up? Like, isn't that what you do? And to see that Auto HDR has done an even better job, and it's created a better foundation for our agencies to scale with. I can't be more appreciative of, you know, the opportunity to partner with a company like yours.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's only up from here. So
Let's
appreciate you
go.
having me
Let's
on.
get it.
Let's do it.
Auto HDR, baby.